Hello everyone, I'm Grim, a freelance artist, and I make the webcomic Pursuer of Truth. I've been working on it pretty consistently since graduating a few years ago, so I want to share what I've learned to help me stay consistent in my progress on it. I think creating a webcomic is an amazing journey, but staying consistent on that can be very tough. This video's goal is to equip you with tips and tricks to progress steadily on your webcomic, even if you don't have a lot of free time. While I don't do weekly releases of my comic, I make fairly steady progress each month toward releasing 2 larger chapters each year. I did that last year, and it's one of my goals this year to keep that up. This is the pace that works for me right now since I have to prioritize doing work that pays. So obviously you should tweak the speed of your workflow to your time and what your situation is. Now, let's get into the meat of the video. What is challenging about creating a comic consistently? So creating a comic consistently can be hard, as it requires output that you just can't really let up on. However, the rewards of that are tremendous. The challenges include having to make time for regular work even when you are unmotivated, being able to break the task down into smaller steps, and there's a lot more pressure than just doing one-off comics. However, if you can nail that consistency down, it can be very rewarding. Some of those main rewards are building a regular readership and community around your creation. You get in a lot of practice at making comics, and it will definitely teach you how to plan to meet your release goals and deadlines. Tip number 1 is to sit down and plan like you're a professional. Put that stylus, pencil, or whatever drawing implement you have down right now. Before you do any drawing, take time to plan your comic ahead. What approach you take exactly is up to you, but I like to work in a big, medium, small sort of way, tackling the big ideas of the comic, like the overall narrative, before I get down into specifics like thumbnails. You may want to look into script writing software or storyboarding techniques when you plan. I personally use Notion and Clip Studio Paint for my entire process. I write and edit my scripts in Notion, and I do all the art and final production in Clip Studio Paint. I keep it nice and simple. Tip number 2, craft your comic production pipeline. The steps of a production pipeline ensure that everyone stays busy and on schedule. Typically, they're used when you have a larger team, when you're making something such as an animated film or a video game, but keeping one for yourself is a good way to have a consistent workflow and know what you can be working on whenever you have the energy for it. Typically, for me, the steps for making a webcomic include outlining, scripting, thumbnailing, line art / inking, flats, shade, dialogue, effects, promotion, and scheduling the comic. But I can do some of those steps at the same time as others. So in actuality, my pipeline ends up looking more like outlining the entire future comic whenever I have time / a need to, scripting a chapter, thumbnailing, line art. Once line art is done, I can start doing the flat color and the dialogue, which that's where I revise my script when I'm putting it into the comic, and start drafting ideas for promotion all at the same time. Once the flats are done, I can finish up the dialogue and start on shading. And as the shading's being completed, I can start working on promotion because I'll have mostly finished art I can use to show off. Lately, I've been showing off earlier works in progress too, just because I need to get better at talking about my webcomic more often. Notably, it's also possible for me to do the final effects while working on promoting the comic, as both of those tasks are pretty light. And once all the art is complete, I can schedule the pages. Heck, I can start scheduling pages as I'm finishing art. But while I'm scheduling the pages, that means I can start outlining or scripting the next chapter. Did you notice how at that last step, the pipeline nicely loops right back in on itself? That's something to plan for if you're doing a long-running project. You want to make sure that your pipeline naturally leads back into its next step. It's just continuous. Also, do keep in mind that this is what my production pipeline roughly looks like. You should make yours based on your needs and steps of your comic. I do fully rendered art for my comic. You don't necessarily need to, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. I'm just insane and I love shading. Tip number 3, find your rhythm between scheduling and habit building. This one is probably one of the hardest tips I have to implement, but if you're going to be trying to make steady progress on your comic, you're gonna need a system to do it. Depending on how you like to work, I'd suggest either scheduling time for working on your webcomic every day and not letting anything else take up that time, or by building a habit of working on it each day. Larger tasks can be something you promise yourself to spend X amount of time on each day or get X number of done each day. And if you do that for long enough, you eventually end up with a comic. For example, using the latter method, Chapter 5 of Pursuer of Truth has 52 panels. So, if I wanted to get the shading done in the entire month of April while giving myself off on weekends, I have 22 weekdays to do that. That's about 2 to 3 panels a day that I would need to do. Then, to give myself some buffer time to meet the deadline, I'll cut that down by a week to 17 days. So that means I actually need to shade 3 to 4 panels a day. Or you can add up how long you expect each panel to take and schedule in that time. Personally, because I'm terrible with time, I prefer and use the former method as it allows me to have concrete objectives and not all panels call for equal amounts of work. Tip number 5, staying motivated. This one is tricky because it will vary so much from person to person. I'd suggest a couple of things to stay motivated on your comic creation journey, as corny as they may sound. Write down what the theme of your comic is, as in the main core of the story, not the aesthetic or genre, and envision that one scene you are making it for. When you don't feel connected to your story, take a look at that and run through that scene again in your head. That's honestly the one that I come back to the most. I have one panel in my head right at the end of the story that I know I'm working towards. Have some friends you show works in progress to, be those other comic creators, a few patrons, or close friends, or just another creative who is willing to hype you up and hear you out about things you're worried about with the comic. Definitely be careful about this one if you have people who give you unsolicited critique. Show works in progress to people who will be gentle with your incomplete work. Also, be mindful of showing readers work early. Try not to spoil your own comic for them. And, of course, when showing your comic to other creators, be kind and reciprocate interest in their projects too. It can come across as selfish, even if we don't mean it that way, to ask for support and never give it in return, which can make connecting with other creators hard. And another tip to stay motivated, if it's been a long time that you've been working on your comic, reread it. Start from the beginning rather than just speed reading to get through it. Enjoy it like you were one of your readers instead of a creator, and see how far you've come. Relish your plot twists and clever panel layouts. All of these tips have been helpful to me at some point while making my webcomic, so I hope they help keep you focused and excited when it comes to making your own. And the last tip I have for you today to keep working on your webcomic consistently is to improve and refine your pipeline. In the less nebulous feeling zone of advice, look for ways to improve your pipeline whenever you can. This is a double-edged sword though, so just note you can just as easily use this as an excuse to not work on your webcomic, so keep an eye on that if you decide to do this. Ways you can improve your comic production pipeline include staying up to date on the tools you use to make your comic. Go learn about the intricacies of the type tool. I know it's boring, but those 10 seconds you save relearning how to do something every time will add up to minutes saved. Read other comics and watch other creators making their comics to see how they do things. Read critically and see what they are doing that you like and stands out to you. Do you like their panel spacing? The way they do speech bubble tales? Note that down. And anything you can't figure out yourself is an opportunity to ask your fellow comic creators, which leads to making friends. And of course, try experimenting with smaller projects. Don't be afraid to make a couple of comics with just a few panels to experiment. You're not making your own comic, so there's no need to be bound by consistency and your other expectations you've set out if you just do smaller experimental projects on the side. Thank you so much for watching. I hope these tips gave you ideas to help you work on your webcomic consistently, and don't be afraid to show off how far you've come with your own comic and any tips you have that have helped you keep working on it in the comments below. If you found these helpful and you want to support me, go give my webcomic Pursuit of Truth a read. Leave a comment. Go rate it. Or you can subscribe here for more videos about my art. I don't know exactly what I'll make, but they'll be art related and you'll get me. So why not? Anyway, with that, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.